There are moments in life when everything feels like too much. It's not just stress, not just a bad day. It's the kind of emotional weight that makes it hard to breathe, hard to think, and almost impossible to believe that anything will ever change. If you've ever been in that place, you know how isolating it can feel, like no one else could possibly understand. For a long time, therapy didn't always know how to reach that place either. Many approaches focused only on changing your thoughts or pushing you to be more positive. But when you're in deep pain, those words can feel like a wall between you and the person trying to help. And then came something different. Something that didn't ask you to choose between change and acceptance. A way of working with the mind that said, yes, you can grow, and yes, you can accept yourself exactly as you are in this moment. This approach is Dialectical Behavior Therapy, DBT. Over the years, DBT has quietly grown from an idea into a movement. It's showing up in hospitals, community mental health centers, schools, prisons, and even online spaces. It's helping people who have felt stuck for years find ways to keep going, to connect, and to build lives they want to live. But why is it rising now? Why is this therapy, which began in a small research program decades ago, suddenly becoming one of the most talked about tools in mental health? The answer isn't just in research studies or clinical manuals. It's in the way DBT meets people where they are and gives them the skills they need to survive and grow. At its heart, DBT blends two powerful ideas: acceptance, the ability to fully acknowledge reality as it is right now without judgment, and change, the tools and skills to make life better in ways that matter to you. Most therapies lean heavily on one side or the other. Some focus on change, pushing you to challenge every thought and habit. Others focus on acceptance, helping you make peace with what is. DBT says you need both. That's why it's called Dialectical Behavior Therapy. Dialectical, meaning the balance and integration of two seemingly opposite truths. It's not about choosing between acceptance and change, it's about holding both at once. DBT is not just a conversation between you and a therapist, it is a training ground for your mind and your emotions. The process involves learning how to be present without being swept away by your thoughts, building ways to survive emotional storms without making them worse, understanding and managing your emotional responses so they don't control your life, and navigating relationships with clarity and confidence while respecting both yourself and others. These skills are practical and real. You don't just talk about them, you practice them until they become tools you can reach for automatically in difficult moments. The reason DBT is spreading isn't just because it's effective in studies, although the research is strong. It's because the approach feels human. It doesn't demand that you pretend your pain doesn't exist. It doesn't dismiss your emotions as overreactions. It says, yes, what you feel is real. Yes, it's intense. And yes, you can learn how to live with it without letting it destroy you. For many, this is the first time therapy has felt like a partnership rather than a lecture. It's not about being told to fix yourself. It's about being given the tools to take one step at a time toward a life worth living. The power of DBT lies in the way it turns complex emotional struggles into something you can actually work with day by day. It doesn't rely on vague encouragement or empty reassurance. Instead, it gives you concrete, repeatable actions that can be applied in moments of distress, confusion, or emotional overwhelm. The change it creates is not sudden or dramatic like a movie transformation. It's a gradual shift, a series of small victories that begin to add up into a new way of living. At first, these skills might feel awkward or even pointless. You might wonder how pausing to notice your breath or naming your emotion could possibly change anything. But over time, the process starts to make sense. Mindfulness helps you step out of autopilot and become aware of what is actually happening in the present moment, instead of getting lost in the past or future. That awareness is the first step toward making a different choice. Distress tolerance gives you the ability to ride out the intense waves of emotion without doing something you will regret later. It's not about making the pain disappear instantly. It's about surviving it long enough for it to naturally ease. Emotion regulation helps you understand your patterns, like the triggers that set off certain reactions or the habits that keep you feeling stuck. It gives you ways to take care of yourself before you hit a breaking point, so the emotional storms are less intense when they do come. And interpersonal effectiveness shows you that it is possible to speak up for your needs, say no without guilt, and set boundaries without destroying your connections with others. These are skills that can be learned, practiced, and strengthened, no matter how hopeless things might feel in the beginning. What makes DBT different from many other therapies is the structure and support that comes with it. It's not just about showing up for an hour once a week and talking about your week. DBT often includes skills training sessions, individual therapy, and even phone coaching between sessions when you need help applying the skills in real life. This kind of ongoing, hands-on support means you're not left to figure it out on your own when life gets hard. It's a safety net and a training program combined. The results speak for themselves. People who once felt trapped in endless cycles of crisis begin to notice that the gaps between those crises are getting longer. The moments of peace start to feel more frequent. Relationships that were once explosive or distant begin to stabilize. Self-destructive behaviors start to fade as healthier coping mechanisms take their place. None of this happens overnight, but it happens. And for many, that is something they never thought was possible. The rise of DBT is not just about its techniques. It's about the hope it offers. It tells you that even if you have struggled for years, even if you have been told that you are too much or too broken, you can still build a life that feels worth living. It acknowledges that the road is hard and that pain is real, but it also shows that there is a way forward. That combination of realism and hope is rare in mental health treatment. And it's one of the reasons DBT continues to spread around the world. The growing influence of DBT is not an accident. It reflects a shift in the way the world is beginning to understand mental health. For decades, conversations around therapy were filled with stigma. Many people were taught to hide their struggles or to feel ashamed of emotions that seemed too big. But now society is beginning to recognize that mental health is not a weakness. It is part of being human, and support is not only acceptable but essential. DBT fits perfectly into this new wave of awareness because it doesn't ask people to deny their struggles or minimize their pain. It gives them language, structure, and hope at a time when the need for those things is greater than ever. One reason DBT is gaining momentum is because of its track record with conditions that were once considered untreatable. Borderline personality disorder, for example, was long thought of as a diagnosis without much hope. People living with it were often labeled as difficult or too unstable for treatment. But DBT changed that narrative by showing that with the right skills and support, even the most intense emotional suffering can be managed and transformed. The studies that followed confirmed what people were already experiencing firsthand: fewer suicide attempts, fewer hospitalizations, and more stability in everyday life. That evidence gave DBT credibility in the wider field of psychology. And once professionals saw the results, interest spread quickly. Another factor in the rise of DBT is its versatility. While it was first developed for borderline personality disorder, it is now being used to treat a wide range of struggles: depression, anxiety, PTSD, eating disorders, substance use, and more. The skills of mindfulness, distress tolerance, emotion regulation, and interpersonal effectiveness are not limited to one diagnosis. They are human skills, useful to anyone who feels overwhelmed by their emotions or disconnected from their relationships. That universality has allowed DBT to expand beyond clinics into schools, treatment centers, prisons, and online programs, reaching people who might never have had access to it otherwise. Cultural shifts have also played a role. Today's world moves quickly, and with constant connection through technology comes constant pressure. Many people, especially younger generations, are growing up in an environment where emotional struggles are common but often dismissed. The language of DBT resonates in this context because it validates those struggles while also offering concrete steps forward. It says, yes, life is hard. Yes, your emotions can feel unbearable. And here's what you can do right now to survive and keep moving. That directness cuts through the noise in a way that feels practical and compassionate at the same time. Accessibility is another reason DBT is on the rise. More therapists are being trained in DBT every year, and many clinics now offer specialized DBT programs. Online therapy platforms are making DBT skills available to people who live in areas without in-person resources. Even social media has played a role, with therapists and mental health educators sharing DBT concepts in ways that reach millions of people across the world. The core ideas of mindfulness, radical acceptance, and emotional regulation are spreading beyond therapy offices and becoming part of everyday conversations. The rise of DBT also reflects a deeper hunger for therapies that do more than just reduce symptoms. People don't just want to feel less depressed or less anxious. They want lives that feel meaningful, relationships that feel real, and emotions that don't constantly derail them. DBT speaks directly to that desire by focusing not only on survival, but also on building what it calls a life worth living. That phrase captures the essence of DBT's impact. It is not just about getting through the day, but about creating a life that feels worth the effort of waking up in the morning. The phrase saving lives can sound dramatic, but in the context of DBT, it is not an exaggeration. For many people, this therapy has been the difference between another trip to the hospital and another chance to keep going. The skills are not abstract theories. They are practical tools that people can reach for in their darkest moments. Imagine the experience of someone overwhelmed by the urge to self-harm. Before DBT, that urge might feel impossible to resist, like the only option for relief. But with distress tolerance skills, there are alternatives, ways to ride out the intensity until it passes. Techniques like holding ice, engaging the senses, or grounding in the present moment can give just enough distance for the crisis to subside. What might have ended in injury or another emergency room visit can instead become a moment of survival, and over time, survival begins to stack into resilience. For someone struggling with explosive emotions that damage relationships, emotion regulation skills can be transformative. Instead of being consumed by anger or fear, the ability to pause, name the feeling, and choose a response creates space where there was once only reaction. That space allows for healthier interactions, fewer regrets, and more stable connections. When relationships stabilize, so does the sense of belonging. And with belonging comes the motivation to keep going. In the lives of people who have battled feelings of emptiness or despair, mindfulness can be a lifeline. Learning to anchor attention to the present moment makes it possible to experience life as it is, rather than as a blur of regrets and fears. Small practices like noticing the breath or observing thoughts without judgment begin to shift the relationship with the mind itself. Instead of being trapped by thoughts, there is a growing sense of being able to witness them, and that shift creates room for hope. Interpersonal effectiveness also plays a role in saving lives, though it may not seem obvious at first. Many people in emotional pain struggle with isolation or conflict. When you learn to express your needs clearly, set boundaries respectfully, and maintain relationships without constant breakdowns, you begin to rebuild trust and connection. Those connections act as protective factors against despair. Having someone to call, someone to lean on, or simply someone who understands can make all the difference when life feels unbearable. The cumulative effect of these skills is profound. Studies show significant reductions in suicide attempts, hospitalizations, and self-harming behaviors among those who practice DBT. But beyond numbers, the impact is visible in individual stories. Stories of people who once believed they could not survive their emotions, but now have a toolkit for living. These are lives that might have been lost, but instead are finding new meaning, new purpose, and new strength. What makes DBT especially powerful is that it does not promise a life free of pain. It does not deny that suffering exists. Instead, it equips people to face that suffering without being destroyed by it. That honesty makes its message believable. People can trust DBT because it acknowledges reality while also offering a way forward. It says, yes, life can hurt. Yes, emotions can be overwhelming. But with practice, you can survive them, you can live through them, and you can still create something meaningful on the other side. This combination of realism and hope is the essence of why DBT is saving lives and why it continues to spread. In a world where so many therapies feel disconnected from the intensity of real suffering, DBT stands out as something grounded, practical, and deeply human. One of the clearest signs of DBT's rise is the way it has expanded far beyond the traditional therapy office. In its early years, DBT was mainly offered in clinical settings for people diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Today, its reach is much wider. The skills have proven so adaptable that they are now being taught in schools, correctional facilities, hospitals, and even corporate wellness programs. This expansion is part of what makes DBT stand out. It is not just a treatment for one group of people, but a set of life skills that can be applied almost anywhere. In schools, DBT skills are being introduced to help students cope with stress, anxiety, and peer pressure. Teachers and counselors are finding that mindfulness and emotion regulation are powerful tools for young people who are navigating intense emotions for the first time. By learning these skills early, students are better equipped to manage conflict, focus on learning, and prevent small struggles from escalating into crises. The goal is not only to support academic success, but also to prepare students for the emotional challenges of adulthood. In correctional facilities, DBT is being used to address some of the most difficult behavioral issues. Inmates who participate in DBT programs often report better self-control, fewer conflicts, and an improved ability to handle frustration. For many, prison can be an environment of constant tension and emotional volatility. DBT provides a structure for managing that intensity and creating healthier ways to respond. By giving people tools for self-regulation and communication, DBT reduces violence inside facilities and increases the chances of successful reintegration once sentences are complete. Hospitals and emergency departments are also adopting DBT principles. Patients who repeatedly arrive in crisis, sometimes after self-harm or suicide attempts, are being offered DBT-informed interventions that go beyond immediate stabilization. Instead of simply discharging someone after a crisis, clinicians can now introduce skills that help the person cope in the days and weeks that follow. This shift transforms hospital visits from revolving doors into opportunities for lasting change. Veterans programs have also embraced DBT, particularly for those living with PTSD. Combat trauma often leaves individuals with overwhelming emotions, difficulty regulating anger, and challenges in relationships. DBT offers a framework for managing these struggles without ignoring the intensity of what they have been through. By combining mindfulness with distress tolerance and emotion regulation, veterans are finding tools that support both healing and resilience. The therapy doesn't erase trauma, but it helps make the burden of carrying it more manageable. Even in workplaces, DBT concepts are appearing in stress management and wellness programs. Skills like mindfulness and emotional regulation are valuable for anyone in high-pressure environments. Learning to pause before reacting, tolerate distress, and communicate effectively are not only therapeutic tools, but also professional strengths. In this way, DBT is crossing into everyday life in ways that few therapies have managed to do. This spread across so many different settings shows the universality of DBT. While it was created in response to deep suffering, the principles apply broadly to human experience. Everyone faces stress. Everyone encounters conflict. Everyone feels emotions that can be overwhelming at times. DBT provides a way to navigate those universal challenges, and that is why it resonates in so many contexts. Its rise is not confined to one diagnosis, one population, or one culture. It is steadily becoming a language of resilience that anyone can learn. The rise of DBT is not just a story of the present, it is also a glimpse into the future of mental health care. As awareness grows and stigma decreases, more people are seeking help earlier in their struggles. That shift creates a demand for therapies that are practical, effective, and accessible. And DBT meets all three of those needs. Its clear structure, proven results, and adaptability make it uniquely positioned to continue shaping the way therapy is practiced worldwide. One of the most significant factors in DBT's future is technology. Online therapy platforms and digital mental health apps are making DBT skills available to people who might never have access otherwise. Someone living in a rural area far from specialized clinics can now attend virtual DBT groups, work through skills modules on their phone, or practice mindfulness with guided audio. This accessibility is changing the landscape of therapy, turning what was once limited to major cities and academic centers into something that can reach anyone with an internet connection. Telehealth has also expanded the way therapists deliver DBT. Group sessions, individual therapy, and even coaching calls are now happening online. While some feared this shift would dilute the therapy, many clients report the opposite. The ability to practice DBT skills in real time, in the environments where challenges arise, makes the therapy even more relevant. Being able to text or video call a therapist during moments of crisis allows skills to be applied when they are needed most. This immediacy reinforces learning and reduces the sense of isolation that often fuels despair. Another area of growth is the adaptation of DBT for new populations. Research is exploring how DBT can be tailored for children, older adults, and culturally diverse communities. Each adaptation expands the therapy's reach while staying true to its core principles. The skills themselves remain universal: mindfulness, distress tolerance, emotion regulation, and interpersonal effectiveness. But the way they are taught can reflect cultural values and specific life stages. This flexibility ensures that DBT will not remain confined to its original design, but will continue evolving to meet the needs of a changing world. The future of DBT is also being shaped by a broader shift in how mental health is viewed. Increasingly, people want therapies that do more than reduce symptoms. They want therapies that promote resilience, growth, and meaning. DBT fits that desire because it does not stop at survival. It emphasizes creating a life worth living. That vision resonates with anyone who has ever felt that life is too overwhelming to endure. It speaks to the possibility of not just getting by, but of actually building something fulfilling. Universities and training institutes are responding to this growing interest by expanding DBT education for therapists. More clinicians are learning the model, and certification programs are spreading across countries. This means that in the coming years, the pool of trained DBT practitioners will grow significantly, making the therapy more accessible to people who are searching for it. Looking ahead, it is likely that DBT will continue to move beyond traditional therapy settings. As more workplaces, schools, and community organizations recognize the benefits of teaching emotional skills, DBT's influence will expand even further. The rise of DBT is not only about treating mental illness, it is about equipping people everywhere with tools for living. That is what makes its future so promising. The rise of DBT can be seen not just in statistics, research studies, or clinical programs, but in the way it has become a movement that is reshaping the conversation about mental health. At its heart, DBT is more than a therapy. It is a philosophy of living that embraces both acceptance and change. This combination speaks to people far beyond the therapy room. It offers a language for understanding human suffering and a framework for building resilience that resonates with anyone who has ever struggled to hold their life together. What makes DBT feel like a movement is the sense of community it creates. Across the world, support groups, online forums, and therapy groups built around DBT skills are giving people a shared vocabulary for their struggles. Instead of feeling isolated, individuals discover that others are working through the same challenges, practicing the same skills, and celebrating the same small victories. This sense of solidarity reduces shame and creates hope. When people share their experiences of surviving with DBT, they inspire others to try, to keep going, and to believe in the possibility of change. Another reason DBT feels like a movement is its openness about the reality of suffering. Many therapies focus primarily on eliminating symptoms, as if the goal is to return life to a state of normalcy. DBT takes a different approach. It acknowledges that life is difficult, that emotions can be overwhelming, and that pain is part of the human condition. By refusing to minimize or dismiss suffering, DBT validates people's experiences. At the same time, it provides tools for navigating that suffering without being destroyed by it. This honesty makes DBT more relatable and believable than approaches that seem detached from real human pain. The balance of acceptance and change is also what gives DBT its staying power. Acceptance alone can feel passive, while change alone can feel invalidating. Together, they create a path that feels both compassionate and empowering. This balance is what draws so many people to DBT, not just as a therapy, but as a way of life. People begin by learning the skills for survival, but over time, those skills become part of how they relate to themselves, to others, and to the world around them. As DBT continues to spread, its influence is showing up in places one might not expect. Mental health professionals from other disciplines are incorporating DBT principles into their own practices. Books, podcasts, and courses inspired by DBT are reaching audiences who may never enter therapy, but who still benefit from its wisdom. The ripple effect is clear. DBT is not confined to those in crisis. It is becoming part of a larger cultural shift toward resilience, mindfulness, and emotional intelligence. The rise of DBT, then, is not just the story of one therapy's success. It is the story of how a set of ideas about acceptance, change, and survival, can resonate so deeply that they begin to shape the way people everywhere think about mental health. In this sense, DBT is not only saving lives, but also changing the culture of care, compassion, and healing. The story of DBT's rise is, at its core, a story about hope. When it first emerged, it was not immediately obvious that this therapy would change the landscape of mental health care. It began as an approach designed to reach people who felt unreachable, to help those who believed their suffering was too great to bear. Over time, what started as a specialized treatment grew into a widely respected method, studied by researchers, practiced by clinicians, and embraced by people around the world. The strength of DBT lies in its practicality. It does not promise to erase pain or to make life easy. Instead, it offers tools for managing the reality of human suffering. It gives people a way to face emotions that once felt impossible, to tolerate moments of crisis, to communicate more effectively, and to slowly build lives that feel worth living. These are not abstract ideas. They are skills that can be practiced, refined, and carried into everyday life. DBT's rise also reflects a deeper truth about mental health, that healing is not only about treating illness, but also about nurturing resilience. People everywhere are searching for ways to live with more balance, compassion, and meaning. DBT meets that need by teaching acceptance and change side by side. It does not force people to choose between acknowledging their struggles and striving for growth. It allows both to exist together. This philosophy is part of what makes DBT feel so human, so real, and so enduring. As DBT continues to spread into schools, hospitals, correctional facilities, workplaces, and online platforms, its influence will only deepen. Its core message, that even in the face of deep suffering, change is possible, has universal appeal. Every time someone learns a DBT skill and uses it to survive a difficult moment, the therapy's impact grows. Every time a person shares their story of finding stability and hope through DBT, another life is touched. The rise of DBT is not just about one therapy gaining recognition. It is about a shift in how people view mental health, how communities support one another, and how individuals find the courage to keep going. DBT has become more than a treatment. It has become a reminder that no one is beyond help, that healing is possible, and that life, even when it feels unbearable, can be reshaped into something meaningful. In the end, the rise of DBT is the rise of countless individuals who, armed with new skills and a renewed sense of hope, have chosen to keep living, keep growing, and keep creating lives worth living. That is the true legacy of DBT, and it is why this therapy will continue saving lives for generations to come. The rise of DBT has not been confined to the country where it began. What started in the United States has steadily grown into an international movement, crossing languages, cultures, and healthcare systems. The reason for this expansion is simple. The challenges DBT addresses are not unique to one place. Emotional suffering, the struggle to regulate feelings, and the search for ways to survive overwhelming pain are experiences that exist everywhere. DBT's ability to meet these universal struggles with practical skills has made it adaptable to communities across the globe. In Europe, DBT has become a recognized and respected therapy in countries such as the United Kingdom, Germany, and Sweden. Hospitals, clinics, and mental health organizations have implemented DBT programs, not only for borderline personality disorder, but also for conditions like depression, eating disorders, and substance use. The structured nature of DBT, with its focus on skills training, individual therapy, and group support, has made it attractive to systems seeking evidence-based treatments that can deliver measurable results. In Asia, DBT is gaining ground in countries like Japan, South Korea, and India, where cultural norms around emotions and mental health differ significantly from Western models. Here, DBT's emphasis on mindfulness has resonated deeply as it aligns with long-standing traditions of meditation and contemplative practice. At the same time, therapists and researchers are finding ways to adapt DBT so it respects cultural values around family, community, and social harmony. These adaptations show the flexibility of DBT. It can remain grounded in its core principles while honoring cultural differences. In Australia and New Zealand, DBT has been introduced into public health systems with particular attention to serving young people and those in rural communities who often face barriers to care. The use of online and telehealth platforms for DBT has expanded access in regions where in-person therapy is difficult to sustain. These digital adaptations have shown that DBT's core principles can thrive even outside the traditional therapy room, further expanding its reach. DBT is also making an impact in regions where mental health services have historically been limited. In low and middle income countries, where access to therapy is often scarce, the modular structure of DBT skills training makes it possible to deliver essential tools even in resource-limited settings. Workshops, community programs, and short-term skills groups are bringing DBT's life-saving strategies to people who might otherwise never encounter formal mental health care. What makes DBT's global rise especially meaningful is the way it bridges cultural divides. While the specifics of emotion, identity, and family dynamics vary widely across societies, the core human need to cope with suffering is universal. DBT's approach, validating emotions while encouraging growth, has a way of cutting through those differences. It does not impose a single cultural view of healing, but instead offers skills that can be integrated into many contexts. This adaptability ensures that DBT is not just a therapy for one group of people in one country, but a resource for humanity as a whole. The spread of DBT around the world is a reminder that healing does not belong to one culture, one nation, or one language. It belongs to everyone. And as more countries embrace DBT, the therapy's promise that even the most painful lives can be transformed becomes a shared global message of hope. The rise of DBT is more than a story about therapy. It is a reminder of what is possible when human beings refuse to give up on themselves and on each other. At its core, DBT is not just a collection of skills or strategies. It is a philosophy of hope. It says, even in the middle of chaos, you can find balance. Even in the middle of despair, you can take one small step toward life. What makes DBT so powerful is that it speaks to something universal. Everyone knows what it feels like to be overwhelmed by emotions. Everyone knows what it's like to wish for relief, to long for change, or to doubt whether they can go on. DBT does not deny that pain. It validates it, and then with compassion and clarity, it offers a way forward. The legacy of DBT will not only be measured in research studies or clinical programs, but in the countless private victories happening every day. A young person choosing to stay alive when they thought they couldn't. A parent learning to pause before reacting in anger. A survivor of trauma discovering that healing, while slow, is possible. These moments often go unseen by the world, but together they form the true measure of DBT's impact. So as we reflect on the rise of DBT, the lesson is clear. Healing is never out of reach. Change is never impossible. No matter how heavy the struggle, there is always a path, sometimes narrow, sometimes steep, but always there for those who are willing to take the first step. And perhaps the most important truth of all is this: you are not alone. DBT's rise is proof that when knowledge, compassion, and perseverance come together, lives can be saved, hope can be restored, and a future worth living can be built. One choice, one skill, one moment at a time.